This is what I did to go to prison. I would go to someone who is selling their home and ask them to sell the home at a certain price, let's say 1.5 million. And then I would say, can I put the home in an LLC or a joint venture agreement? Basically, the agreement just says, we're going to pay you this, and anything over and above what I sell the home for, I get back. So then I would go get an appraisal. Now, these homes were in areas where you could get high appraisals. This was back in 2004, 2005. So there were other comps in the neighborhood that appraised at $3 million, so we would go get an appraisal for $3 million. Send the appraisal to a bank, and the bank would do their own appraisal, and they would sometimes come back even higher than that. The bank knew that I had paid 1.5, or that the joint venture agreement said 1.5, and we were going to pull cash out of it by having an investor, which there were a whole bunch of people looking for these homes that they could pull cash out of them. And then they would come and do a contract with the joint venture. And the way it worked is $3 million would go to title, $1.5 million would pay off the seller. The other $1.5 million, well, not all of it, because some of it would go back, but there was usually, because the banks wouldn't lend that much on them. So let's say if a home appraised for $3 million and they would lend 2.2, and the seller has to get 1.5, so there's 700,000 on top of that. I would try to make $100,000, but there's usually hard money fees, title fees, and then the person that bought the home, they would get $500,000 cash back. And that was called an equity deal. Now, a lot of these investors would just use their credit score. They didn't have to have the assets, because back then they did the liar's loans, and they didn't have to, they would make the payments on them. They would say they were going to move into them, but a lot of times didn't, and that's all fraud. If you say you're going to live in the home and don't, if you don't have the assets, even if it says a stated income loan, if you state them wrong, it's considered a fraud. And if you don't believe me, go watch a TED Talk called How to Rob a Bank from the Inside, or watch The Big Short. And that's exactly what happened and why I got sentenced to 7 years in federal prison.